just here to answer your questions, address your
I can't
concerns.
stay so.
We have not finalized yet, but we do have a couple of budget submittals that we're going on
Just
to
that.
a meeting with Finance Committee on Tuesday night. So what we have complete prior to their approval of the next budget is the need, the numbers for 2.5 override. We're looking for all of your support for this. This is something that the town certainly needs, and we've all agreed on that. So we hope to see that through. It not only encompasses the operation of the town in whole, but also the school, the district, so Wachusett Regional. So we have, as Kerry introduced, members of finance here. We certainly have Becky here, who's the numbers person. We've worked very hard together, all of us, to try to come up with these solutions, if you will. So with that, if any of you have any questions or what you want to address first, please feel free to just fire away.
Fire. So,
There you go.
I have a question. Now the animal control, the ambulance, or the housing, isn't that regional?
Animal
Isn't that
control is
regional?
the
So we were,
oh, I'm sorry.
so other towns pay us, but the figures on the worksheet doesn't show any funds, any offset for those.
and is
So
it
those, yes, so those come in through revenues. They are on what we're using as our total revenue. Those come in as an offset to, like, in addition to what we're, like, 2.5 levy that we're limited by. So those are in the total revenues that we're showing there. So we put the total expense into our expenses, and then we add in the revenue from the different towns.
But you don't show an offset by department.
We're not allowed to.
You're not allowed to do that?
It's kind of in a different area of the calculation. So the budget is all just the expenses. Then there's the revenue side, but that's how we know whether we have a balanced budget or not. So on the revenue side, we have your tax levy from the previous year, plus 2.5%, plus any new growth that we have, which are new buildings, taxes coming in for new growth, and that gives us how much we can tax the taxpayers. On top of that, then we have all the revenues that come in from departmental receipts, from the dispatch center, animal control, the other towns, and that type of stuff, permits and fees, I think I mentioned that, excise taxes, it's one of the biggest chunks, meals tax, penalties and interest on taxes, interest that we earn on our investments and that type of stuff, all go into that. So we have a total that is going to come in as revenue, and then we have to make our expenses match that total estimated revenue, and that's where we are under. So we're hoping the override will balance that out.
Is there a place to find that information that, I just couldn't find it, where the income or the, whatever you want to call it?
You know, where the offsets are.
I'm not sure if the revenue piece is on, we can put it up there. I can make copies of this calculation though, if you'd like to see that.
Yes, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, we can't put it in the expense as an offset because
Right.
the revenue from those items is not technically for those items, it goes into the general fund. So we can't offset it directly.
So just as a point of information, obviously it's been a very tough year. There's a lot of things that are going on. It's trying to nail Jello to the wall here with things that are changing the way that dynamically this is. And the process this year was that we went back to the town administrator went back to the department heads, and they asked the departments to be able to go ahead and express what they felt was their need to carry out their charter. And they did that. And everything became a pretty hefty number. And everything that they needed to do their job indicates that they need an override around $2 million. Then we went ahead, Gary went ahead and he took some swipes at that and changed it a little bit. And then there's another series of cuts that are pending, that are being reviewed. And then that's going to be the amount that would be part of the budget if the, or that would be the budget if the override fails. So it's a very difficult process. Every time that we go through and we listen to the different department heads indicating that there's a need for things to be done, Joe Buckley will be very eloquent in his discussion around the kinds of things that he needs for operating in a town. 84 miles of road in the town, trying to plow it and maintain it, etc. And so we listen to all of those ideas and things that the town has, or that the department has as their mandate, some of which is being dictated by federal and state laws. There are some things. I found out the other day that there's a requirement for stormwater that the streets be swept. And I didn't know that was a requirement, but it's turning out to be, and now you have to have the equipment to do it and the people to do it, etc. So that's part of the needs budget. The balanced budget is that budget that says we have so much dollars, so many dollars in revenue, and those dollars in revenue need to fund as much of that need as possible. And for that can't be funded, we need to be able to take that out. That's our process now. We do have, in the spreadsheets that you have, and you've seen it's on the website, they'll tell you that in fact, the one that you may well be looking at looks something like this. It says at the very end that there's a difference between what the needs budget is and what the cuts that they've already made. There's still $250,000 shy of where we need to be able to be. So there's still a significant amount of work to be able to get down to the point where we have a totally balanced budget. And I want to say to Gary, I appreciate the work that he's done. All the department heads, everybody's gone in and committed to getting this stuff to us in a timely enough fashion and giving us the opportunity to be able to look at it. And now you guys who see it, and you can ask any question you have on anything that's in the budget. I don't know that I have an answer or that we have an answer, but you can ask the question and we'll try and find out.
With that, if I may, to what Peter said, the balanced budget, as we will be discussing this coming week, is without the use of stabilization, without the use of free cash. There's another couple of things that we have to use that for. We have to use free cash, I believe not stabilization, right, but free cash for snow and ice deficit, which is the only account we can deficit spend on. We're supposed to reserve $150,000 out of free cash for next year, 25's budget. And also, we are okay to use $150,000 to help balance the FY2024 budget. So the stabilization vote on town meeting floor takes a 2/3 majority, right? Correct? And people are shying away from using that. We only have 1.168 right now in there. That's your savings account. That's for the town in case of emergency and so on and so forth. So I just wanted to add that to what Peter said about the balance.
Absolutely. And I guess the point of information when we talk about stabilization and free cash is that if you think about your own expenses, you're paying your electric bill every month, you're paying your mortgage every month, your rent, it's an ongoing expense. If you were to go into your bank account and take out a chunk of money and say, well, for this month I'm going to use that to pay my mortgage, then if it's gone, it's gone. Next month that expense is still going to be there. So now you don't have the money to be able to take it out. So there's a dynamic that says if we take money out of the stabilization free cash, what we're calling one-time money, and apply it to ongoing expenses, it's going to create a structural deficiency in next year's budget, which means we start behind the 8 ball going into next year. So it becomes real difficult, as Gary was saying, it becomes real difficult to try and manage all this stuff. Where do we get this stuff from, and how do we deal with it? It's something that requires some two-income billing way to be able to get to that.
And also, as Becky can tell you, that if we would take that money out of stabilization, it would affect our bond rating, which right now is, I believe, AA. So, which, the better the rating, obviously, the better that investors out there want to invest in us and what we have to do. So, just to try to throw a few more things in as we go.
Anybody has any questions?
So, excuse me, but I'm not so knowledgeable about all of this, but, so say if you don't get the override and you have to make cuts, who makes those decisions on what's going to be cut?
Department heads.
Well, technically, the final is the finance committee, because it's our budget.
So,
Well,
the-
but that's informed by information from the department heads. So what because they still have their responsibility to meet their charter. They have to do it. The police department has to do what the police department does.
We'll have to
So-
get everything done.
Yeah, it's not like they can't. Police department, if they don't have a budget, they may have to find another way to patrol the streets of Rutland, however they do that. Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, I don't know, however they end up getting that done, they're still gonna be responsible for that. So, they're the ones that ultimately make the decision as to what how they will spend whatever money it is that they get. But Alex is right, we get to a point where the finance committee will recommend a particular amount of money, and we'll suggest to each one of the different department heads where we think that they should be. In the past, what we've done is we've gone ahead and given them specific targets. Take $100 out of this account, $40 out of this account. And we're starting to understand that with this large, I don't say discrepancy, but variance between revenue and expenses, it now becomes their responsibility to go in and say, I can name that tune in 12 notes and deal with it in that fashion. We will recommend, we will say, but ultimately the decision of what it is, who spends what, how it is that comes in is going to be the voters.
If I can comment, like for my department anyways, we have a lot of mass general laws that require us to do a certain amount of things, that we do payroll, we do benefits for all the employees, we do the, collect all the taxes, do all the investments, all the money that comes into the town is deposited through my office. And we process about 30,000 bills a year. There's only 2 of us in there. The 5% cut that they're looking at, if the override doesn't pass, will cut my staff, my assistant, to half-time. So that will leave me, 1.5 people to do the payroll for. I think we have. I do about 100 checks every 2 weeks. Process all the tax bills. But we're at a point where we will not be open to the public, except for 2 days a week, I believe, is that what I've cut it down to with the staffing cuts that we'd have to do. Those are some of the things that would happen if the override, the cuts that we need to do if the override doesn't pass in my office anyways.
I believe. I'm sorry, I just have a follow-up question.
Okay.
So I guess I'm hearing a couple of different things. So am I hearing that if there are cuts, you will go back to department heads, who's ever providing services, like if it's the senior center or other areas, you would go back to them and ask them what they will cut? Or would you be in a position where you would say to a certain entity, no, we have to cut you out completely?
This is a good question, and we've already done that. We have that on our sheets. We've already gone to the department heads. It wouldn't be right of any of us to go to the fire department and say, you have to cut this amount, or I'm gonna take this amount from such and such. So the department heads have been given the final figure, so we already have those figures from them, and that virtually makes, if that were to go through and the 2.5 did not pass, it virtually makes all of your town departments part-time. not all of them. I mean, you will have, for instance, as Peter brought up, Joe Buckley, DPW, so you'll go down to one employee, one DPW employee to take care of 84 miles of maintenance, snow and ice. Snow and ice, we do have contractors, we can deficit spend. We are able to use employees from other departments to help with snow and ice. It'd be a delayed response time, obviously, our schools are concerned in the winter time, and we get all that, but the department heads make their final decision on where they think it can come from.
No, it would be the finance committee that would make recommendations. The finance committee would know, we already know, $250,000 shy right now in the house. So we can suggest each one of the departments whether or not something might be equitable or not. I don't know that we would want to go to like the police department and say, you've got to take out the $230,000. So there's got to be some mutual conversations back and forth as to how that would get done. What's the most practical way to be able to deal with it? And that's what's going on. That's what will be going on, trying to figure out how do we get from this amount of difference to this amount of difference, and ultimately down to nothing. I'm sorry, there's a question over here.
Well, I believe we all understand money in and money out. We all work on that system.
Yeah.
What can we do so that the town has more money?
What a great question that is.
Really, we need more money.
The select board worked with the development of the planning board to be able to start looking at what the opportunities are out there. You know, about Rutland Heights up here and the sale of the property and what that has meant to the town. Is there a way for the town to be able to market its resources to be able to generate more income? Well, there probably is, but every time something gets suggested, the conversation about the roads and access and all that stuff starts to happen. Yeah, there are ways. I wish there were easier ways to be able to do it, but we haven't come up with the magic.
But we keep making more roads.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
We keep making more roads. Every time a development is put in, we have more roads to take care of.
None of those roads go up to a place where you put in an industrial park.
Well, Rutland Heights has been closed since '91,
Yeah.
and nothing's been done.
Oh, no, they're building up there now.
Well, now they're building
Yeah. Now,
a 55 and
there-
over.
and there are other parcels of land up there that could be utilized by somebody.
Why is it taking so long?
It's, you know, economic times where people may not be interested in trying to relocate out of, I don't know, Worcester or Boston or someplace like that, or even just a local business maybe starting up. There's just doesn't seem to be any real interest in trying to do anything with that kind of thing right now. It is a very definite concern. It's something that people have been talking about for an extended period of time. So
It was mentioned last meeting that you didn't want a grocery store up there because the semi-trucks would be coming in. I see semi-trucks going down Pleasantdale Road.
Oh, yeah, constantly.
There's more
Like
semi-trucks
incredibly
coming
fast.
into town.
Right.
122, 122A, they're all trying to get to Gardner. Wasn't that the Podunk Pike at one time, Pleasantdale Road?
That was supposed to go straight through from border to border, but it didn't.
We're still waiting
Just
for
a
a speed limit
clarification,
sign.
we didn't say we didn't want the trucks going through. There's not good access, so it's not attracting the markets because they don't have the access that they would require. So
There's
it's-
no highway.
Right, so it's not us that says we don't want them.
Yeah.
We can't attract a market because there's not good access. So it wasn't us putting a limit on it. We would allow a market to go in there. They're just, and there was a lot of marketing to try to get people on there.
But I thought there was a medical firm that wanted to go in there and build, and they were turned down.
They started negotiations and it fell through, honestly. I don't know what caused it, but I don't know that they were turned down. I think the negotiations didn't work, so.
And what happened about the Woo Sox? I thought they wanted to build up there too.
Somebody came and there was some interest and they researched it a little bit, but nothing really came to fruition for that, so. We don't turn anything away. We'll always take money.
Now, where did that money go? That 1.6 million that we got for that land? Where's that
Becky can
money?
explain how that money, because everybody has that
She's
question.
got the whole thing on.
So the money for that, it goes into it's governed under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 63, which instead of it just going into our free cash, instead of just going into our pocket to be spent, whatever, it's put into a special revenue fund that can be used to pay off debt, which is, we're using that to pay off our last payment on the property, that we have one debt payment. And then it can be used for additional, anything that we would borrow money for. So it's gonna help with some of the infrastructure problems that we haven't been able to fund. Repairs to the roofs of this building, the public safety building has leaks and some infrastructure problems. So that money is it's kind of, it has to be used for anything that you would borrow funds for more than 5 years. So it's, instead of it just falling into our free cash, and you know, everybody's like, well, we got that money, why don't we put it towards the budget? But it's because it's a sale of property, that's how money came in. It's governed by this Mass General Law that you can use it for debt.
It's also important to note that even if we could use a $1.6 million one-time, or I think
Exactly.
1.2 after the debt payment, that only helps us for 1 year. That doesn't do anything for the ongoing expense that'll happen. So really, even if we could use that money, it is not in our best interest to use that money for our operating budget.
Again, it's just pulling out of your savings to,
That money should be used for things like, large investment trucks that you have to buy, large assets that you have to buy that are one-time purchases.
which we've been falling behind on, and because we've just been using our free cash towards the debt, the budget each year.
Now with the, oh, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask, so because of all those things, right, that's a good point, right? One-time sale of property, all those kind of revenue streams only help you once, right?
Right.
So rather than focusing on how to get more money, what's the town's assessment on why costs keep going up?
Well, there's that thing
Instead of
called
just
inflation.
accepting them, why don't?
The same reason you're seeing in your everyday life.
Yeah.
Electricity.
Well, but I guess one
health
specific thing, right? I mean,
insurance.
if I look at the budget, right, the schools, and don't get me wrong, I have kids in school, right? So, but that budget seems to just explode, and there's no control over it.
Yeah, so there's two pieces to that. One, the biggest piece is the, what's it called? Sorry, what's the specific term?
It's
The minimum contribution. So the minimum contribution the state requires us to pay went up like 1.4 million, I think, this year.
But what drives that, and
The
why do we
median
have
income of
no
the town.
control over that?
It's the median income of the town. So this town has, in general, become more wealthy.
So, okay, but
Whether you feel like it has or
no,
not.
I'm not arguing, right, so if that's the case though, right, and they get more money, what are they doing with said money? Because if we get assessed that much, right, if we get assessed more taxes, we expect the town to do something with those taxes, right? If the school is getting assessed higher rates because our income has gone up, where is that? Because it seems like every year we get into a room and somebody comes up there and says, you're taking it away from the kids if you don't approve this.
Yeah.
But then the kids go to school and they come home with a list of stuff that we still have to supply to the school.
The vast
So where
majority
is the
of,
money going?
the vast majority of school expenses, right, come in personnel, right? And the cost of wages, or salary, whatever you want to call it, the vast majority of the increases that you see in a company's business increasing expenses is from personnel. So when you have high personnel costs, those increases exponentially increase every year. The biggest increase is health benefits, which for anyone who runs budgets at their work or anything like that, we've seen pretty much 10 to 15% increases on health benefits year over year, every year for at least 5 years now, if not more. So that when that's a big portion of your budget, personnel and then health benefits being those, being a big portion of that too, and that huge increase every year, that leads to a very big increase overall in your expenses. So that's a portion of it, and I'm not saying that's all of it, and that's a piece, but that is a very difficult thing to keep up with when you can only increase your revenue by 3 to 4% a year, but you're paying 10 to 15% more in a big bucket of your expense.
So just before you jump in, where the school board, the school superintendent and those folks, and then your representatives, our representatives on the school committee, they have meetings on a regular basis, they're on TV, et cetera, and they go through the budget and they're talking about the stuff that they need to be able to do. In the last conversation or last meeting that I attended, there was a significant number of items, things that they want to be able to do, that they feel they need to do with the children, that they can't do. Because the increase that they've seen this year, they're just not finding it possible just to pass that along. And as you probably all know, 4 out of 5 towns vote for the school budget. It goes through, it is what it is. 2 towns vote against it, and then they're back to sharpening the pencils and doing something with it. Go ahead.
We also had 72 increased enrollment in what you said,
78.
78 from Rutland. So 70 plus students going into the school system this year.
Yeah.
So those are 2 large things that have an impact on the school budget. I also think it's important to think about the school budget as a whole, as a percentage of our overall expense is only about 60%. It's actually less than, it's like 58.5 right now. That's pretty standard for towns in this area and probably on a lower side. If you look at towns getting, a little bit further east, you go to like Shrewsbury, Grafton, they're up at 70%. So we're actually doing okay. I mean, I think 60% is fine. I wouldn't say we should go higher than that on a general average, but we're not out of the norm in any way, shape, or form.
I was going to say, I'm a newcomer to town. My family and I moved here last year. I think it's important to take a step back and look at what's in our control as a town and what's not. The district and school dynamic is really tricky because we have this is it the largest district in the state?
Second or third.
So
it's pretty big.
With, in my mind, I'm like, okay, whatever the school budget is just going to keep going up. That's out of the pie. We have 40% left. So what can we do within our control? And going back to what was said earlier, we have to be strategic and creative about building the tax base. Within our soil in Rutland, small businesses, small or medium-sized businesses have a plan in place. The thing to keep in mind, and correct me, Gary, or others if I'm wrong, the thing about the override is that it's just getting to where we need to be across the departments. It's not like this big ask and asking for lavish, extraneous things just to throw. No, it's just getting to what we need to, getting where we need to be, just so we can function, just so the roads can be clear, so we're not even asking for additional personnel, just the personnel we need at the moment. And as it was said in the last library meeting, the override is only going to buy us approximately, and others correct me if I'm wrong, about 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, that's correct.
Now, that's great because I personally feel, and I'm not telling others how to vote, that the override is needed, but it is only the beginning of a forward-looking plan for the town, because if we're going to, keep Rutland, moving forward with the growth it's seeing and with the rising costs and inflation, that stuff's all out of our immediate control locally. But we have to even fight harder and counter against it if we want to be independent, from, relatively shielded, not that we can be totally shielded from some of these other outside forces. And the school thing is tricky too, because it's multiple towns are voting, and the committee, makes their decision, and we're like, okay, here you go, here's the money, at least this amount we have to just give to them. There's no choice in the matter.
So the schools are certainly a contributing factor to the budget and pretty significant. But as Becky was saying, there's a lot of stuff that happens based upon state law or federal law. And you don't get the opportunity to be able to go and say, no, we're not going to do that. Let them come after us.
Right.
I just have a question about the old timers that were born here, and they're on set incomes, and they're already on, Meals on Wheels and Medicaid. What are you going to do to keep them here, or are they going to be downsized out of town?
No, geez, that was a conversation we've had on our board since the beginnings.
Well, what are you going to do?
The one thing that we don't want to do is be able to put people in a position where they feel they have to sell their house and move.
Okay.
You are. Sorry.
We do. So what are you going to do?
So, that's a perfect question. The right thing to ask. What happens there? The select board has been looking at the possibility of trying to find programs or install programs. Maybe Becky has some information on it, as to what we might do to mitigate some of the expenses, the costs associated with the raise in taxes. I'm not really sure what it is that they might end up coming up with, but there might be some things there.
There is, what I think I've got at the senior center, there's elderly and senior exemptions that are available through the assessor's office. It's based on your income and what the value of your property and that type of stuff. If you look at the calculator on the website that tells you how much the override will affect your taxes, there's also a spot at the bottom that tells the regulations of what you can do, like who qualifies for exemptions. That'll give you up to $1,000 off of your taxes. You have to apply through the assessor's office, and the assessor's office actually governs that. I think Nancy at the Council on Aging was talking about doing some Friends program where, you know, that type of stuff. And she could probably talk to something about that. But again, in my office, we can only do it through the exemption process through the assessment
Okay,
office.
well, I wouldn't have a problem voting for the increase if you could show me ahead of time that the old timers that were born here do not have to leave. That's it, just if you can do that, even before the schools and for anything else. Because they've been here, they're the Rutland people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you can go to the assessor's office now and see if you qualify for that.
I don't need it.
Right.
Excuse me, but
Okay.
I'm that old, but no, I don't need it.
most of those you need to be poverty level in order to have that.
Well, but people living on Social Security I was surprised at how low poverty level is now.
Really low.
With all kinds of money that people might be getting, nobody's at a level where they're making all
Now,
kinds
I
of
work at the
dough.
Holden Senior Center, and the seniors are mostly they're not all at poverty level. But in order to get those rewards for being old, they have to be at poverty level or below. You can say up there that, you know, they can all go apply, but they're not gonna get it. They don't get fuel assistance, they don't get the circuit breaker, they don't get those because they're not at poverty level.
Well, do we
And
know
they're
how
being
many people
told-
in Rutland are at that? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, they're being told to quit their little part-time jobs. And I think you've got quite a few of us who grew up in this town
Yep.
here today. And
So I did pass something out that the assessor's office had just printed out, and it talks a little bit about the program that Becky briefly spoke on. And also, it breaks down exactly where all the tax money goes for all the departments. So I think this is a good way for you guys to have an idea of exactly where your money's going. And obviously, the schools is a big part of it. When people talk about that we mismanage money, our problem is that it costs us more to educate people, the students, than what we receive in taxes. So that's a deficit. And unfortunately, people like our town, and they keep moving here. And the more people that move here, the more children we get, and the more it costs the town. So that's a huge part of our problem. I know people talk about controlling construction, but unfortunately, most of the developments are grandfathered in, so the development's going to continue because there's still a backlog of developments to come through that we can't do anything about because those have already been approved. So if we don't do something to try to resolve the situation, it's going to continue to get worse. And like they said, with the using one-time funds, you're just going to double your debt, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So that's what we're trying to resolve right now, is to try to get us back on a level playing field, get our departments up to where they should be, not really, I mean, to the best they can be. But we've been cutting budgets for, I was on the finance committee for 12 years. That's all we ever did every year was cut budgets to our local departments to try to be able to afford the schools. And it's not to put the pressure on the schools because they didn't build the houses, we did. But we need to find a way to resolve it. So like I said, this gives a lot of information on where the money goes, so you have a better perspective of what your tax dollars pay for. So
And one of the things that we keep communicating back to the school committee and the school district is that they need to start really putting pressure on their local governments, to the state Congress and state Senate, because a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with are things that are mandated by the state. So where do we get the money from? I mean, that probably is going to be the place. We have to change how the state apportions the money that it has. I don't know how we do that. Maybe everybody writes letters and everybody says, hey, you can't continue to do that, because I'm not going to pit one town against the other, but Boston's got a pretty big area and they got a lot of influence down there. And maybe some of our voices should be directed at getting the state government to look at something.
But the bottom line is, if we pass it, the schools are covered, senior centers, everybody's covered, except the seniors that can't afford the 500.
I'd love to be able to tell you
So,
that we're going to make sure that
I'm just-
that's not going to happen. I can't. I mean, I can't.
Again, we're governed by Mass General Law,
Yeah.
so the only tax break we can offer to people is if you qualify for the exemption or abatement, that I can't pick and choose and that type of stuff. I mean, I offer payment plans through the tax office, so you can pay it in installments.
Becky, I'm gonna plug the seniors thing here. The Friends Group does have a fund, Seniors Helping Seniors. We sell raffle tickets every year, but that fund is available to donate to all year long. So if anybody wants to do that, those same seniors can come and apply for assistance.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I totally agree with that. I was telling my wife the other day, and said, we're voting for this stuff here, and I know that if we are able to convince the town to pass the override, we're going to be affecting people, and that hurts my heart, because it's not something that I didn't sign up to do that. I don't want to do that, but it's going to happen. And it's not this board, it's not the department. It's us, the citizens of the town. We're going to make that decision. We're going to make the decision that we're going to not do that override, or that we're going to do the override. And either way, we are going to affect people. It's the seniors that have been there for a long time, sees an increase and they may not be able to handle it. It's the police department, it's the library, senior center, the employees there. They may end up without a job.
Well, I know the people
Even if you do the override?
No.
If you
Right.
don't.
But exactly, so either side we're hurting.
Yeah, you're gonna
Do you
hurt
know what I
someone.
mean? So if we pass the override, if the override passes, but there are people that aren't gonna be able to afford it.
Right.
If we don't pass it, there's gonna be people that lose their jobs that work for the town. So
And we won't have the
it's difficult.
services.
And we won't have the
So-
services, exactly. So it's
Yeah.
a tough situation.
So seniors go, okay.
That's it.
It's
So
all right.
it's
No,
It's
it's
a
not-
holiday.
it's not the answer you were looking for, but-
We're not
I know.
taking one side or the other, for sure, and like Pete said, it's like, it's a hard decision either way, we're here. And if you read the news, we're not the only town that's doing overrides. Shrewsbury, I believe, did one, Dudley's proposing one, did you say Grafton, I think, or something like that?
A lot of those towns have had several.
Correct.
Yeah, I would also say that the people that don't qualify for that help, right? If the tax rate goes up and they have to pay more in taxes, they may all of a sudden qualify for that. So that increase may put them from a non-qualification to a some qualified. So like, I think it's tough to say that like, those people won't get help when they may get help. I don't know the numbers to that. They'd have to go talk to the assessors or the.
It would be good if we had researched that as much as we researched all the other stuff, so we'd know. Because you're right, we don't know how many will be hurt or not. But it's sort of a space we should have just checked out a little
We
bit more.
brought it up a couple times to see
Yeah.
what the impact would be. I believe we were told that that wasn't available to figure out.
We'd have to know
Hearing that.
each individual's income,
Yeah.
income level, each,
So it's,
You wouldn't know that,
person.
well, okay.
or each
Yeah.
senior that would have a problem, we'd have to know the income levels, and that's the only way we could tell that.
There are other resources too. You know, if you might get assistance with food as opposed to your taxes. So
Right.
we have a lot of other resources, and we have that at the senior center as well, plus in town. And we have 3 food pantries, one at Rutland, Wachusett, and one at the senior center. So that's another way that other families can help, is to support those things,
Right.
to take the burden off.
This young lady right here first. And then-
You can,
Behind, go.
okay.
Behind her too.
So I was looking at the cherry sheet, and the comment that I'm hearing is that this is just bare minimum. This is just what we need to be able to function, is with the 2.5 override. But I'm seeing new positions created, and I'm also seeing a significant hike in some of these salaries. I'm not saying that they shouldn't get the cost of living increase. I'm a teacher, I'm fighting for 3% right now. Okay, not in this district, don't worry. But I'm fighting with my, for 3%. So when I'm seeing some salaries that are going up by 10+%, that's hurting me a little bit, because that's money that I don't have to pay for somebody else's salary increase. Plus an additional position. Those are the things that I'm looking at, is my money that I'm fighting for right now, that I don't have a lot of to begin with, to pay for this. And it seems like it's just going to things that, I'm not getting myself. So I don't know, I have a hard time justifying paying for a 10% increase on somebody's salary when I can't even get 3%.
Is it a 10% increase, or is it an increase in hours that's bringing it up that much?
What positions are you looking at?
Let's see. Let me say babies.
Because isn't it true, even though things are being added, departments are restoring previously cut positions?
That's what I was going to
And-
say.
So,
So they shouldn't have the new next to it.
Well,
is
so
what-
it's new from the prior year.
right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't there because it was cut the year before that.
Or the year before that, or the last,
And
like,
now
minute
they're
said-
looking to be able to put it back in, because what we told them was, tell us what you need to be able to do your job.
And some of those are union, the union contracts
Right.
were new this year. So those are new union rates.
And we'll say that
And contracts.
any non-union people are only getting a 2% COLA.
Yeah.
So I was wondering about the language of new as well. It makes sense because it's year over year.
Sure.
But at least to inform our residents, because I saw that with the knowledge that, we're restoring previous cuts.
Right.
And I saw it new and I was like, huh. But now I know, but other folks might not necessarily put that
No,
together.
I think that's a fair point.
Yeah.
It is just, it's the terminology, it's the way it's described.
Right.
And it's going to ask that, it's going to beg that question. How do you do? Now, some of them are new. Some of them we realize that we need, I can't remember if it's the police department that's doing a new lieutenant. So there's management needs within the departments. A new lieutenant is an important function for.
Oh, I'm not going after,
No,
I think that fire should be number 1, police should be number 2, they should be funded 100%.
So-
I'm not arguing
No,
with
and
that.
it's not, I'm not trying to.
He's just using
justify it.
examples.
I'm just saying that's a new position, and it's a new position that's really needed for Nick to be able to do his job, for Seth to be able to do his job. And those things, just the things that we just need to be able to address. Now, it's going to look like it's a new position, and the question is going to be, well, why? You're getting along without it so far, why don't you just stay where it is? That wasn't the mandate, that wasn't the directive. The directive was, go tell me what you need to be able to do the job that you need to do. And that's what they came back with. When we get to, excuse me, just a second back, when we get to the point where we go to town meeting, and then we go to the election on the following Monday, all of that may go. That new position may end up going, because we got a cut. I'm sorry.
So I'll speak for my department. There's a position for a 16-hour payroll HR assistant in my office, which was cut, I think it was back in 2019. We were like, okay, well, we'll just do it with 2 people. And with the increase in employment and benefits, and the number of tax bills has increased, we just can't, and all the mandated things that we have to do in our Mass General Law requirements that we have to do in our office. I'm looking to restore that position. It's only like 16, I think it's 16 or 19 hours a week. So it's may show up as new, but it's not new. It was cut 3 years ago. So it's restoring that and making my department more efficient.
So,
Is that what, because I'm looking at that position right now, is that what the going rate would be for a 19-hour, 16-hour position, the 46,000?
That's on our non-union wage matrix. I think I don't have the number right in front of me, but yes. So like $20 an hour, I think.
At the town meeting, will these, like, I think having the stories and the people behind these lines of knew this, like, and someone from the police department saying, this is why we need a lieutenant. I'll give you an example where me and my, my colleagues here have, and they come up with anecdotes or stories of how hard pressed they were because they didn't have said resource or needed resource. And I think having the personal story behind that and just like concrete examples, because then you read these, and I agree with her where it's like, well, like, what's this all about, right? Because you have no context. And I'm wondering if the town meeting is a place and time where we can provide the context, justify the need.
well, so I know that on the website there is there's a document that says that if the override passes, these are the services that would be and continue, et cetera. And that's based upon the mandate that we have for the town departments to do that. There's another page, and I don't know that I've seen it on the website at this point, but there's another page that says that if this override doesn't pass, then there's, then it's just to the sea. It's just going through and cutting everything. And these are the things that you're going to lose. And there are things like ambulance service on the weekend. Don't have it, can't afford it. There have been conversations about the library, about the COA, and maybe we just don't. And you can't do everything because you closed down the library. Well, the building isn't going away. Heating, lighting, it's still going to be here. There's going to be an expense with this and the COA. And so as much as there might be things that you may want to say, let's go ahead and do that, it becomes hard to take it out entirely. You can't go to the COA budget and say, let's take out that money entirely. It doesn't work like that. It's still going to be there. I'm sorry, did that answer your question? It doesn't satisfy you, I know that, but.
No, I'm looking at some of the expenses, and I mean, again, like, I'm a teacher, like, everything that I do is doing more with less than what I have. So when I'm looking at a budget and I'm seeing like the new position, and I'm seeing, like, again, I'm not going after fire or police. I feel like those should be funded 100% regardless. But when I'm seeing some of these things, and I'm thinking, okay, well, is that really that necessary? Like a 46,000, no offense, I'm not like going after your department, but like, I'll work for you for 46,000.
Mine's 16, I'm the treasurer collector, so I'm not sure where
that position that she was talking about is this budget at 16.5.
Okay, so there was one that was like 46, and I was like, I'll do that if it's 20 hours a week for sure.
No, there's one that's more than, I think the 46 is a 32-hour a week.
Okay, well.
Something like that.
Yeah, Rebecca's position is 16.5.
Yeah, 16.5, yeah.
That's the
On the
HR.
light, 16.5 for the position you're talking about, I believe, in Rebecca's office.
Okay, so then I'm sorry, I won't work for you.
Like, it's not that much.
You caught my ear when you said, and you're right, doing more with less.
Yes.
Just an example, and you may see it on there, the Council on Aging, Senior Center, whatever you want to call it. The outreach has soared. It's always been high. We have 30% of the population is 55 and over. Wow. Okay, so when people need help, phone calls all day long. And that's a position where you might look and say, hey, wait a minute, but we've been underfunded for years. I'm the director, town pays me 23 hours. 16 hours of support in outreach. So, and I depend on my volunteers, drivers, everybody else. If I didn't have one, could not function. But that might be an example that you see a big increase in. That's just to bring us up to a full-time work the staff up, and it's only 2 staff.
Mhm.
So, but I can see what would be confusing. I
Right.
think that's a good example of what you might be looking at in some areas.
Again, I think year over year, we've been doing less with more, and we're with the more we've got is now
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've asked for in the past, or done in the past for budgets, is iterations. One has been level funded, and then one is level service. So what does it cost to do the same services that you got the prior year? That budget is always higher, right, because of inflation, basically. So it's important to note that every time, we've kind of cut these budgets back, not only are we not getting the services that we got the year before, but we're losing some services because we're cutting as well. So that's just been cutting every single year for many, many years now. So this is, again, an attempt to get it back to a point in time. And I think this is still not even technically getting it back to, like, DBW, I think, is still significantly lower than it was. But to your point, you're doing more with less, and they've figured out better ways to do more with less. So, they've become more efficient in what they're doing, but they're still in dire needs.
So going back to what Dale said about the fact that there's just not enough money coming in from taxes, and what can we do aside from that? And I mean, I don't know what's out there. I know the state hospital has some land, and maybe we could put storage units out there, and I don't know if the town can own those storage units, and we just have money coming in from the storage units. Or we could put solar panels up. I mean, the state's begging people to put solar panels up. I don't know if the town is eligible for any of that, but even if we had to pay for the solar panels and we could just pay for the electricity for the town buildings, that would be so much help, so much money that we save, because it's electricity is going up like crazy. So I think that we're asking the wrong questions. I think the questions we need to be asking is, how can we be creative in making another way of doing this to bring money in? It's kind of like, people, if they don't have enough money coming in from their regular jobs, they go and get a different job, or they get an additional job. They work their budget that way. Why can't Rutland do that? Why can't we? And I know you guys work really hard to put all this stuff together. It would drive me crazy, all the numbers. And I see the selectmen working really hard, but I think we're working hard at the wrong things.
So you're talking about, I think you're talking about development, some kind of development.
I'm not talking about anything in particular. I'm just saying,
but in
we need to look at this picture from a different perspective.
Right.
If we're going to allow the seniors to stay in town and not go up on the taxes, and be able to fund everybody, because just the taxes, it's not gonna do it. I mean, one person moves into a house with 3 kids, and maybe they pay taxes for 1 kid, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying anything against people with kids, I had kids. But I just think we're asking the wrong questions, that's all. And we're going at it, and we're gonna end up doing overrides and overrides, and they're not gonna even touch what the town actually needs.
So I think there's been countless talk about what you're talking about. I mean, that is it's not something that we've ignored. It's not something that hasn't been discussed by many committees that are in this town. There's a lot of difficulty to all of those things. Like, your example was, if somebody needs more money, you go and get a second job. You can just go do that. The town can't necessarily just do that. One of your examples is putting solar panels in town-owned land. I don't know the specifics behind that, but I would guess that we would need the townspeople's permission to do that sort of thing. So it'd have to go to a vote. I think the radio tower, cell phone tower is an example of that tried to get done, and the town voted that down. So there's a lot of things that are attempted to do in that fashion, but it's not as easy as just, hey, go do it. It takes the whole town to do it as opposed to just one person.
But okay, just use the solar panels, for instance, as an example. I think if the town understood that putting up solar panels in places where, you know, it's land that the town owns, we're not using it for anything, roofs, whatever, wherever they want. I think if people understood that that would pay for this amount of money, that can go directly just to pay for the electricity. And, you know, you're doing the numbers, but with the solar panels, it goes out to National Grid and comes back on not getting a bill. So you wouldn't even have to do much with it. So I just think that there must be a whole lot of different ways that we could look at what's available and talk to the town about that. Because I think people in town are smart. If they were given reasons for doing it, that's why you're here today, I think, is to give us reasons for voting on the override.
We do, on like revenues, we do have 6, I think, solar farms in town, besides the panels that are on the schools and that type of, that bring in personal property revenue. So we are doing that. And I think we get our energy from Golden Hills. So we have, like, our electricity comes from one of those solar panels, so that reduces some of the cost with the tax credits we get on there. We do have a cell tower out on Overlook, I think, over in that way, that brings in about $20,000 a year. So we do have little pockets of things, but we do need we have an economic development committee and the planner and that type of stuff that is looking at that, you know, doing those type of things.
Can other people join that? Is that available for other people?
The Economic Development Committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we limited the membership, right? It just has to be.
There's your answer too, more people getting involved.
Well, no, we have an actual committee.
No, I understand that, but
Right.
aren't those meetings public?
Right, no, she's asking if people want to participate and become a member of the committee.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's
Right.
what people would like to be able to do, but on the same token, like they're here today.
Right.
They can show up at the meeting.
Right.
Voice their opinion.
Yeah,
about
people
how you
need-
guys doing about bringing that development into the area.
People need to
It's a
be
good
involved.
question.
Yeah, but, and so we have done a lot with solar, and then there are some limitations to what the grid will take, so that solar's become more and more difficult and not as much of a moneymaker as it
What I'm
could
hearing
be.
is why you can't do things. What I'm
Right.
not hearing is why
But what we have
you
done,
want to try
like,
to do things.
one of the things is, like Gary, we've been working on trying to get discounted rates for residents for electricity. We're working on a program, becoming a member, our town being a member of that, to help people with their electric bills. One of the things that we put in the budget with, if we were to have an override, is we're setting aside grant funds to actually hire grant writers to bring more money in. We have a program to bring in interns to be able to get more support in our departments so that we don't have to pay for additional employees and get more resources. We have the Economic Development Committee. We're doing as much as we can. And even with Rutland Heights, the 55 and older, the benefit of that is you're not bringing more students in, so you're bringing in more tax revenue that's not going to be a negative impact. So we are doing a lot of things, but we're not going to bring in industry and commercial. We're not going to bring in these big, huge resources all at once. But we are trying as much as we can. Plus, we want to try to maintain the rural character of our community, which is difficult, as I said, because we already have developments that are already locked in. So we're already overbuilding our community. And like I said, it's a nice community. People want to come here. And when they come here, if it's young families, it costs us money. So we're doing as much as we can. We are working very hard to bring in revenues. But it's not as easy as putting up a big factory. There are other opportunities. Maybe we'll be able to put in some kind of a business park or something like that. But it's got to be located such that it's going to attract people. Because we're not the most accessible. And then we have, why would they come here and not go to Holden? They have opportunities as well, and they have a little bit better access.
Why do you say maybe? Right now, there's a few sports events that are popular with the young people. One of those is pickleball, and the other one is the air disc frisbee.
Yes.
If you go up to Berry Falls Dam at any nice day, there are people waiting in line to use that. Whatever it is.
Right, and one of the farms is going to have that kind of resource too. But
why doesn't the town put in a sports
we
complex?
are looking at that. We're going to actually, the select board's going to meet with the capital improvement on the 24th and talk about, we want to invest the balance of our ARA funds into infrastructure, things like what we can do for recreation, how we can correct, our buildings are in dismay right now. If you go out and look at the outside of this building, it needs a lot of work. We've been cutting budgets constantly. We're not reinvesting into our town because we can't even maintain our buildings. So we're gonna look at infrastructure. We're gonna try to see what we can do to go forward with those kind of things, including recreation and things. I can't tell you exactly because the committee needs to meet and make some decisions, but we are working in all of those areas. It's just not that easy, and we need to have a lot of support, we need to have involvement, and people need to be informed about what's going on. You can watch any of these meetings on YouTube, so I realize that people can't always go to meetings, but you can always see a meeting, and you can at least find out what's going on, and if you have a concern or an interest, then you need to come to a meeting, and we need everybody to support the community so that we can move forward. But we are working in a lot of different ways to try to resolve these issues.
They used to send things out in the light bills and things like that if things were going on in town. And that would be good information now that we don't really have a landmark to give us information.
Right, so like the Council on Aging puts a lot of this information stuff in their newsletter, so that's obviously gonna go to the seniors.
They do that for their seniors.
Right, but we have very limited funds, so we can't like do a lot of postage is expensive.
But if it's
We-
already going out anyway.
Right. Well, we don't have light bills. We have, I mean, tax bills. Becky can answer to that. I mean, that's the only thing that goes to everybody is the tax bill.
And that's mailed twice.
And that's my.
But I just feel really cut off from Rutland now because there isn't a way of knowing those things you're talking about.
So like I said, we try to use the COA has a newsletter. We try to use the sign. We try to use social media, the websites. We are trying to get the information out as best as we can, but the library always has information out here available, so it is available.
On the website, you can sign up for town news, or where you'll get an email whenever a meeting is posted, or whenever a bill goes out, or whenever something's going on. You enroll to be notified whenever there's something going on in town, which I would suggest we have in my office, there's instructions of how to do that. It's right on the website, and so you're notified when there's something going on, and so you can attend the meetings or whatever. So that's what the website is, the best resource I think right now, because we don't have, the landmark isn't like it used to be, and we don't have the resources to do mailings and that type of
To
thing.
be honest, the landmark didn't cover us much. So you didn't get a lot about Rutland in the landmark anyway. But we do have a lot of resources that you can get information from. And certainly can always get it direct. But, like Becky said, that's a great resource because I get emails all the time with every meeting going on and things that are going on in town. So some of the responsibility's got to be on you to get the information. We can't, spoon feed everybody all the information all the time. We make it as available as possible in every media that we have at access. Huh?
No, it's a little insulting.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I just meant that we can only do so much, so that how else can we do it? We can't mail it to every single person. So we use every resource that we have to provide that information. We use them in the buildings, we use them on the sign, on the website, newsletters that go out.
Again, I just think we're asking the wrong questions, that's all. And maybe you're asking those questions behind, the scenes, and that's great if that's happening. But I'm just not seeing any results from it. So.
If I may add to some of Lyndon's comments to do with Rutland Heights specifically, I think it cost us, correct me if I'm wrong, about $35,000 to market that property and sell the piece that we did. And they took in 1.6 total. I had to pay legal expenses and all of that. And there's still a great big piece of that left. And part of the needs-based budget is to give that committee funding to the ability to market more property up there. So we're doing the best we can with what we're taking in because there's a huge chunk of property and there's a lot of potential there. That on full build with that 55 plus up there is going to take you in about $900,000 a year in taxes without school students. And that's full build, it's 3 or 4 years down the road, but that's a good chunk of change. It's something we're looking forward to, and we want to further develop that. We want to make make things available up at the Heights, so those folks and others can certainly use it as far as commercial based. I'm sure you're familiar with the piece of property that's right next to Mosio's gas station. That was part of the development way back 8, 9 years ago that we did all that, and we cleared that and made it available. Now we're on our way. So, hopefully there's only a way to go up. And another comment, I know you got a question, Anita, so
It's all right.
another comment I wanted to make about the stabilization fund. No, nobody wants to take the stabilization fund, because if you have a budget base with stabilization funds to get you through this year, you're still gonna have reductions in staff in every department, and I dread what would happen next year. So, and that's the big thing. Alex and Peter, Lynn, and the rest of the finance certainly said that's a 3 to 5 year projection for the 2.5 overrun that we do need. Every year, way back when I first started in town, somebody was always able to pull a rabbit out of the hat. We were always able to get through the year, but that's all we did, year for year. So we're just looking to try to put us in the right place and bring more things in and take some more revenue in, and that's what it's gonna take. So I'm sorry, I know you had your hand raised.
No, not a problem. My concern is with the community center. I think the COA is fine the way it is. I don't think we need to extend it through the whole day. They've increased the staff. That's what they want to do if the 2.5 override goes through. They're going to increase the staff, which is costing a lot of money. And I don't see the need for it. There aren't that many cars up there. You say there's a lot of seniors. Well, there's a lot of seniors who don't go there. I have tons of friends who don't go there.
And I can answer your question. First of all, I've been taking pictures recently of the cars that fill that parking lot.
Yep. And I
it's,
drive by
it's
there a
not an extended day. This is the first year where I've stopped doing as much. I get paid by the town for 23 hours. We have a formula grant that has subsidized a few more hours each year. This is the first year where I have stopped working for nothing, because I have always put in an average of 32 hours. So you may not see it, but I invite you to come to it, because our parking lot is full every day. So, well, then come by and show me.
I just drove by there Friday and there were maybe 10
What,
cars.
Friday afternoon?
No, it was
Maybe a
around
low day.
10:30 in the morning, actually.
Okay, well, here's the thing, drive by another day and come in and tell me it's not full, and then come the next day, because the 1 or 2 times that you've driven by, maybe, but I'm gonna tell you, it is busy, it is full, but more than that, 60% of our time is spent on outreach. So when I tell you about the 94-year-old lady who calls because she is lonely and she needs food, and I send a driver out to go do that, and she calls me at home on my cell phone, which I welcome that, at 6:30 at night, it's okay that you don't think it's going on, but come and participate more often and you will see it.
So about how many people are there that require outreach?
But in this town,
Yeah, just a rough number. How many
numbers,
calls a day do you
like
get, or a week, or?
a day, probably 15 to 20 calls a day.
Okay.
And they might take 5 minutes, they might take an hour, they
Right.
might take a call back.
Well, this is information that I didn't have.
Yeah, and that's okay. I mean, but a lot of people, it was on Facebook the other day, okay? The senior center, all the town cares about, and this is true, and I get this all the time, all the select board cares about is, one, hiring their family. Okay, and I'm gonna tell you that my husband's on the select board, I do work for the town. Tom Galvin's wife works for the town. Neither of these men were on the select board when we were hired by the town. All the town cares about and funds is the COA at 0.38% of the budget, mind you. This is a hot topic. It's very emotional to me. There's a lot of people that need help, and people that step up and give us volunteer hours and hours and hours. But read comments that just aren't true. The town doesn't fund the COA or only care about the COA and not about baseball fields or...
Well, right, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying it was a big chunk of money.
To increase to a 40-hour job and my outreach. And my outreach.
Seems like a lot.
Well,
Like
it
I
may
say,
seem like a lot to you, but...
I know there's a core group of people that go up there, and I know most of who they are. And other than that, I don't know of too many people that go up there at all.
Well, again, outreach is huge. People that need assistance with housing, with paying their bills, with somebody that needs to be placed in a nursing home. I mean, just things that elder service
referrals that we can't even help with. We can only do so much in outreach. We can't do it for them because we're not social workers, we're not nurses in most cases. You know, Dale, you could talk to this, speak to this too. We get calls on, you know, people don't think that there are people in Rutland or Holden that need help, okay? They don't see the fact that somebody might be one meal a day through Meals on Wheels, okay?
Well, I know that they are delivered to quite a few people.
Right.
Yep.
So, you know, I'm actually glad you brought it up because a lot of people insinuate like that Facebook comment, and it isn't even true. Come and see what we do, volunteer your time and help.
Like to just comment on that, just to segue, this is what the finance committee and the department heads and all of us have been dealing with, because there's so many opinions out there as to, well, you should be spending your money on this, you should be cutting, like, because when we have to come up with cuts, it's like, well, no, you should cut them more, you should cut, so it's hard, it's across, like, because somebody thinks the COA should be cut, somebody thinks the library, somebody thinks the treasurer's office, the police, fire, and we've come up with a plan that will work, and the department heads are all on the same page with it, and we're all in this together, and we're asking you to support us with what we've put forward is going to work for the town, and I think that's what we're trying to not pit one department against each other, because that's how we have to move forward in the town of Rutland, and I think that's where we're at right now with the budget.
Well, that does help a lot, because when I saw that, I said, we could probably buy a street sweeper for that.
Right. So, you know, again, and that's what the difficulty that we've been running into, and that's why this is a hard, very hard process for the town administrator, for the finance committee, for all the departments, because everybody's passionate about their department, and they're trying to get their department where it needs to be. And we've gotten this together, we've gotten it to a point where we're all in the same boat, and we want to row together and bring this town into where it needs to be.
So Nancy's point is very well taken.
Yes.
If you drive by and you have any questions of any department, you're driving by the library, stop in.
Oh, yeah, I
I
brought
mean-
a carry-all.
Yeah, but it's a matter of your town, your money. So if you have a question about something, ask her. I mean, we don't want to have 48 people show up in one day. It's going to take away from the service that she's doing, but, yeah.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around these tax exemptions for seniors, because I don't see it. I don't see that this is gonna help the seniors. Being elderly, being blind, being a disabled veteran, there aren't, those tax credits, it's not gonna help. It really isn't gonna help.
We're governed by Mass General Law on that, and that's
What
all,
we're
that's all we
asking,
can do.
from what Diane was saying, we need more revenue. We don't
Correct.
need to make cuts.
Yeah.
We need to get more money in town. When I see down on 122, from still four corners, all the way down to Man's Trailer Park, on the other side of the road, that could all be developed. It's all, isn't it all?
I think a lot of it's owned though by people who won't
But
sell
have
it
you
or
driven
won't.
down there to see it?
Yeah, I live over there, but if it's owned by somebody else, we don't have any.
It's not public land. It's not public land.
It's not public land, but there's a golf course down there.
So
Right.
you need
There's
to
a
be able.
car
you-
dealership
You
down
need to
there.
be able to attract
There's an
somebody.
empty building down there, just sitting there. It
But
used
you'd
to
have
be
you'd
beef
have to
and
be able to
bourbon.
attract somebody there that would be interested in purchasing the land from somebody other than the town and putting in some kind of business in there.
Something.
That's our economic development committee,
Yeah.
that's their charge,
Right.
so,
And it's not like the town can go purchase that land because we don't have the money to do it, so,
But I think the town could come up with ways to, develop, promote, promote development.
right, which is what part of the
Which,
money,
yeah,
which is.
that's part of what's being done as well.
It's in the budget,
I
correct.
just don't see it
Yeah.
happening. I don't.
It's a very slow process.
So, RDIC. RDIC is a committee that will work those kinds of issues. And on TV. I know you're not seeing it, but when it is, when Charter makes takes a picture of the meeting, watch it. And then if you have any questions, next week show up, or next meeting, show up, and complain about it. Not doing enough, need to do more.
I guess we just kind of hope that people that we vote for to run these parts of our town will do the best they can for us, but we're just not seeing progress.
Well, okay, so I'm gonna speak for myself. No one's voting for me. I don't want anybody voting for me. So I'm doing this purely as a volunteer. And that's the way, unfortunately, that's what you really need to be able to do. You really need to be able to get more people that would be committed to the town like you're talking about, to be able to do stuff like this, to volunteer. Now, that's not gonna do anything for the seniors. It is not gonna do anything for the seniors. I don't know how to address that. Revenue, but even if you decided tomorrow morning, you go to the town meeting on May 5th, and you...
Sick of that.
Whenever.
He's gonna get there early.
So when you go to the town meeting, you may want to bring that up as an idea, as how do we go ahead with this budget? How do we generate more interest and see if there's any kind of reaction there? But it's the kind of thing that you're going to have to do, and it is going to require a lengthy period of time, even if it gets addressed in the meeting. Even if it was not this year, but next year was a citizen's petition that was put on the town meeting, and then it was addressed. You're talking years before this thing gets to that point. We're suffering, all of us are suffering today. And the seniors, they're not gonna see the relief that they would if those things that we're talking about were to happen.
Yeah.
I hate to be a downer, but it's reality, it's the way it is. But we need to start.
So just to touch a little bit on the Rutland Heights thing, so having all those condominiums going in, that's gonna make those other lots more attractive, because people are gonna be able to say, look, there's gonna be all these potential customers that are gonna be living there that would utilize maybe a small supermarket, or utilize a business, or even a medical building where you have doctors come in or something like that. So that's gonna drive it as well, and like Gary said, they want to be able to reinvest some of the money, which is part of the budget, so that they can clean the sites up, and they can attract more people, and they can actually try to get some businesses into what's left of that Rutland Heights. So that everybody is really working, and I really do encourage people to get involved. If you have an interest in the development of these businesses, go to the Economic Development Committee, go to the meetings, ask them questions, or get involved and join it. People have to engage in it as well, and educate so that they know what's going on. There's nothing's behind the scenes. All of these things are discussed at all of our meetings. None of these meetings are discussed in back rooms or anything like this. We're doing the best we can to try to generate revenues, but it's very difficult. And we want to do it right, and we can only do so much. And that's why we developed the Economic Development Committee, so they can look at the marketing, not only just working on Rutland Heights, but through the town, and how they can encourage. There's a lot of individual small businesses throughout this town. And look at all the people that come into this town for the 4th of July and for Christmas, and they come to the Milk Room and Lilac Hay. I mean, there's a lot that this town offers, and we bring a lot of people in here, so we just need to be able to market and say, look, you should have a business in Rutland, because look at the people that like to come to Rutland. There's a lot to do in Rutland. And like I said, we're trying to look at recreation as well, what we can do to try to provide more opportunities, because they can generate revenues as well, so they can support their own facility, hopefully, and do more. But there is a lot more going on. I know you say you don't see anything changing, but like I said, we're looking at trying to cut rates for electric. We're trying to bring in grant writers. We're doing a lot. We're doing as much as we can with what we have. And unfortunately, you don't see a lot of people running for office, and there's a reason why, because I'm done in a month. And I've been involved for 20 years, and I'm all set. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. It's insulting many times. I feel good about what I have done, but I would not run again. I would never run again. It's not fun. I don't blame people for not doing it. But if you have the wrong people, then where are the people that are the right people? You need to bring them up and get them to run and put them in place.
So what's your suggestion to make it more fun, to make it, what would you do if you could tomorrow to make it a little more appeasing for people who want to do the role and the job?
to be involved in the select board.
Wait, exactly, just what
No
you
matter,
said.
it's the job. And you just need the support from the residents. You don't want to be bashed and say what you don't do, but you need them to be involved and say, okay, this is a great idea, and come and support it. Like I said, I did the finance committee for 12 years cutting budgets, and they're always the bad guys. But what the finance committee does is they make the recommendation, and the select board doesn't approve the budget. You all, like Peter said, you guys approve the budget. So you end up being the bad guys because you make the final decision, whether we fund something or we don't fund something. It all falls on all of us. It's not on one group or one person. So they make recommendations the best they can. They work with the departments. They try to leave it to the departments. They say, okay, we need to cut more, so you need to cut 5%. But they don't tell them where to cut it. They need to, because they're the ones that know best what, and they can't really manage with the cut, but they know best of what they can survive with. So it falls on the departments to look at the cuts, which aren't really acceptable, but it's all we have. The finance committee brings it to the floor, they make the recommendation, but all of us make the decisions on how we want to go forward. And that's why you need to be informed. So.
Is there a way to tax builders or tax, do a graduated tax on people coming in? Have them pay a higher, have them pay a higher tax and have people who've been here longer pay a graduated tax?
Or how about just taxing people who make more money?
It's based on the, well, they have a bigger house, they have paid more money, they have a bigger house, so they get more taxes. It's based on your assessed value of your property. It's their property taxes, so they're, I mean, the builders obviously have a lot more property that they haven't sold yet, so they are paying the biggest taxpayer in the community is their builders.
But I think maybe what she's talking about though is, so I came from Arizona, and the way they did it there was, a developer wants to come in and build a big community, guess what? They're responsible for preloading taxes to front load the education. So that stuff is not burdened on the people now.
I mean, that again, it's mass general law, so
Yeah.
there's the way
We're not allowed to.
Massachusetts, you know what I mean, so they do
Following the
have,
idea that was just mentioned a little while ago about taxing higher on certain houses in town and whatnot. This, my niece and her family live in a town the size of Bolden outside of Chicago, Illinois, okay? Now, when she told me about this, I was kind of, but it's not really a good idea. But at any rate, what happens is, everybody in their town pays the school tax. Everybody, okay? Now, if you have children in school, you pay it per capita. All right? So in other words, everybody pays the tax for the schools, and if you have kids using the schools, as long as they use the schools, you pay it per capita. Once they're out of the schools, of course, you don't pay it anymore.
Must be a rich town.
This is like this is like talking to your state rep or your state senator or the governor, and you're gonna have to change mass general law, so that, I mean, again, we're all governed by, all of us here are in the town is all governed by mass general law. There are, like with the minimum local contribution in the school, we were talking about that formula should be revamped, and they've been talking about that for an awful lot, but the changes with the way they are in Arizona, I know the way things are different in Florida and things are different in Chicago, but we're governed by mass general law, so changing those is.
And our representatives, you know, Senator Goby and Representative Ferguson, they work very hard. They, especially with the schools and stuff, they do work hard to represent us. But certainly feel free to speak to them with different ideas and stuff. But don't think we don't have the support. But we're not in Boston where all the heavy people, you know, are. So we're just the little people. But they fight very hard for us, and they will fight hard for us even more. And if you have ideas or you have concerns, they actually have representatives that come to the senior center. I don't know, my wife went. I don't know how often.
Wednesdays.
Wednesdays, every Wednesday or once a month?
Once a month at noontime.
So you can actually go to the senior center and meet with their representatives and speak to them on any issues at any time.
Maybe they should come to this meeting.
Yeah, we did. Well, I'll be fair, we did not invite them because there's like 4 different meetings that we've had. I don't know, maybe we can reach out and see if they come to the next, somebody can come to the next one.
we've had, the Finance Committee had meetings with our representatives to talk about school specifically. There were 3 or 4 of us that came down to the annex over here, and we met with them and we expressed eloquently the need for them to be able to stand up and let's get stuff going here. And we can't continue to do what we're doing. You're taking away from the services of the town, and there's nothing that we can do about it, and it doesn't appear as if they're looking to be able to really help us. They are. They're really trying as hard as they can, but they're representing an area, and it's, as Lyndon's saying, it's outranked, if you will, by larger areas that are close to downtown Boston area. Anything west of Worcester is going to not get the same kind of attention. And it's just the way it is. It's representative government. It's the way it is. So it's unfortunate, but squeaky wheel gets the oil. I think that's what it takes.
So we can ask them if they might be able to attend the next one, or a representative from there. But I mean, also we're having several meetings. Actually, there was a meeting at the senior center that Gary went to that talked about, met with all the seniors about their concerns. There's going to be another meeting Tuesday at 11 at the center as well for seniors to ask additional questions. So we're trying to have as much, as many meetings and get as much information out there as much as we can. But like I said, we can only we're doing as much as I think we can do. These are all being televised, so people can see them on cable, or they can see them on YouTube. So I don't really know. If you have other suggestions of ways where they're looking at, some of the friends of the library and the COA are looking at sending out informational cards or whatever to all the residents. I mean, the town can't do that. We can't invest, because we're not here to tell you to vote for the override. We're here to tell you what you get with it and what you get without it, right, so that you go to the floor and you make the ultimate decision at town meeting and at the polls. But we're just trying to be as informal as possible, so that you realize exactly where we stand and what we're dealing with.
So one of the other things that's so critical is Lyndon's saying, at the town meeting, you get a lot of people that come to the town meeting and they'll express, and a lot of times these override suggestions pass the town meeting. We just can't get people to go out and vote the following Monday or Tuesday. And I think if we could... Monday. 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 I'll get it right by the end.
Town meeting on Saturday, May 6th, vote is on Monday.
Thank you. So if I say something different than that, you know what that is. But the idea here is that you don't have to go to the polls. You can request a mail-in ballot. It's allowed now for all of the electoral things that go on. I just got one for my wife and my son, because they're not going to be available.
Yeah, they're in the back of the room.
Yeah, there's actually forms in the back of the room for people interested.
If you're out of town, if you're working, you can't, please. It's a simple thing. You put down a name, you sign it, you say what you want the election for. There's a mailbox out in front of the town hall. Throw it in there and you're done. They'll send you a ballot. And then you just put it in the mail and send it back. It's simple.
So with these meetings, our town is getting bigger, and to do this whole voting that takes 4 or 5 hours, a lot of people cannot be there, especially if they have kids. I know there's babysitting, but to expect your kids to sit in the library for 5 hours while you do your due diligence and be a member of the community and vote just seems a little, I guess, archaic, like a little old-fashioned. We're just seem like we're moving beyond that. So is there a way eventually that it will...
Or ballots?
The town meeting.
Town meeting.
So I think there's a lot more people that would want to participate and have their voice heard, but they just cannot do it. Like last year I had to choose between going to my son's baseball game or going to the town meeting. And of course I chose my son. But again, these decisions do affect him in the long run. I wonder if they'll move eventually to putting it on a ballot type thing where people could have the day, whenever they're available, before work, after work, during the middle of the day, to go and vote on these things instead of being forced to attend 5-6 hour meeting at a school.
Well, there's rules about the town meeting.
But that's our form of government. The only other way to go is if we become a city and you have like a mayor
Right.
who makes all the decisions. But the form of government that we have is a town meeting form of government. And there's no way to change that.
But we're getting better at it,
There's
because now we
zero
get the
way to
little
change
beepers
that?
that we use to
As a
speed
town?
up the recording of the
We
vote.
can't control the way we as a town vote?
You can't change the structure, the town meeting structure.
Right.
And you
You
have to
can't-
give the town a forum in order to speak
That,
about these
because
things.
everybody has to have
So
a
I agree
voice.
that the town meeting should occur and people can ask their questions and, voice their opinions on things like they do. They go up to the mic and say their piece. That also makes the meetings very long, and I get that having those explanations is invaluable. We need that, but to sit there and hold up your card, and then there's also the peer pressure. I remember a few years ago, like, there was the thing with the construction, and it was, you see who votes this way.
Yeah.
But
So-
we used cards for a long time. You have a clicker and nobody sees how you vote.
Yeah.
So there's no pressure onto how you vote. So we've been doing that for a while. So you just push a button and it's your right to vote the way you want.
We haven't been able to be there in a few years.
Oh, yeah.
We can't make
Yeah.
a
It's
meeting,
also
so that's a.
available right away.
But that's why, like,
Exactly.
the override goes to the ballot. The big decisions like that, we do put on the ballot, but we can't put everything on a ballot form. So we need to have, the way our structure is gonna be at a town meeting. And then, like I say, the big questions like the override and stuff will be on a ballot.
But I remember voting for an education override in the meeting. Why would something like that be in the town meeting and not on a ballot?
It still has to go to a
It
ballot.
still has to go to a ballot. Yeah,
If you're doing an override.
So at the town meeting, you vote on the budget contingent on an override, and then you go to the ballot and vote for the override. If it doesn't pass, then that budget doesn't pass.
Right.
So what is
So the same with the override for a school would have to go to a ballot.
The first vote sets the budget. Says this is the money that you're approving,
But that's the most important piece.
right.
Why
But
would
it, but it's contingent on you all saying, yes, we want this budget that was passed with the override.
But
So
the
it's
budget
gonna
gets
be
passed by a small percentage of
But
the
it's
town
got,
to make the
the
meeting.
budget has to be balanced. So we may vote for the $27 million to spend, but only have $25 million coming in revenue. That's gotta come, that has gotta come from someplace, that comes from the ballot.
Right, so it passes over to the ballot, but that gives everybody the opportunity to vote on whether they're going to support that or not. Whether it be a mail-in or go to the ballot or whatever. Everybody will have the opportunity to make that final decision. But it's set up at the town meeting.
Yeah, I guess that's what I don't understand, right? So the only thing you have the opportunity to vote on at the ballot is the budget that was set by a meeting that was only voted on by a small percentage of the town?
It's not even the budget, you're voting on the override.
Yeah, which is.
The override for the budget that was set by
That's right.
a small number of people. That's the problem I
That's
have.
right, no, you're absolutely right.
Mass general law.
Yeah. So that's the structure that we have, and we can't change that. It's a state thing, unless we become a city, like I said, and you vote for mayor, which I don't think we're quite ready for that yet, but.
What's the criteria for a city? Is it population size?
I'm not sure.
Well, Linda will run for mayor.
No.
That would be a
I
clerk
would
question.
nominate Linda for mayor.
Yeah, no.
Raise your hand.
No, I think a lot, obviously population has a factor in it and stuff like that, but I don't think we want to go that way. We don't want to become a city at this point. Because then you lose that much more. I mean, you vote for that person, but you're not even being able to go there and debate it, really. I mean, that's a whole nother.
Are we limited on time here?
No, absolutely not.
Now, so it's up to you folks to say how long you want to stay.
Okay, I should have thanked you before I complained. For all the work at listening, and I do know the community center, for me, it's been busy the days I've gone. But, and I'm sorry, Nancy has been awesome. We just moved into town, and she's a sweetheart, and they do many things there. And so she's not here right now, but yeah, I didn't mean to dump on you personally. It's just, I think the seniors in our society just get, I wish we could somehow do for them what you just did for the override, like you showed what could be done, what couldn't be done. So maybe if they could have put that together and let the seniors know what's coming for them, that would be good. But still, thank you all for doing your paperwork.
So, I'm a
Okay.
senior,
Yes.
and
No.
I'm a senior, and I joined the finance committee to be able to be a little bit more involved with things that are going on in town. And Alex is not, but he joined. But he joined to do the same thing. We're trying to volunteer in or commit to things that we can do. And that's not to say that Lynn is senior, she's not. I know she's
Just stop while you're ahead.
Yeah, but the idea is that if you have if anybody, not just the people here in the room, but anybody on TV or watching what's going on, if you have a desire to be able to help do something, come and talk to folks. There's always going to be a way that they can get you in touch with people to help out. I mean, there were people talking about Joe can't cut the grass, Joe Buckley can't cut the grass. And then people would come down with their lawnmowers and jump out and cut the grass. That's helping, that's volunteering, that's great. If you can do that, anybody can do that. Please go for it.
Now, Alex and Lynn and the rest of finance, so you got Karen, you got Tom, they know the dates of the town meeting and election. So whatever Peter says. But I want a personal thank you, certainly to FinCom, to the Board of Selectmen, to Becky, to the these people are volunteers, and we've been going 2, 3, sometimes 4 meetings a night. I'm not even gonna say week, day, and they've been working very hard on this. It's a very tough decision-based year, and they've all stepped up to the plate. They're all doing what they can. They might screw up the dates once in a while, but great.
I'm a senior, I don't remember.
Yes, you are. Great group of people, and I certainly commend them for their volunteerism in getting this where we are now.
So the annual town meeting is
I'm ready to what's the verbiage that entertain a motion to adjourn. You guys
meeting is May 6th, and the election is May 8th.